A Chesapeake couple says it's divine intervention that allowed them to escape Israel amid the war. Fighting between Israel and Hamas has brought the death toll to more than 10,000 people. Only on 10, our Maria Bray spoke with the couple who once feared they were stuck in the war zone.
It started with a desperate call to WAVY, alerting us that 12 missionaries from a Suffolk church were stuck in Israel. For several days, they waited for help until a viewer flicked on his TV. It was a mission trip a year in the making for Brian and Rita Larson.
It was a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation.
We were looking at it as a trip of a lifetime.
And it would be, but in an unimaginable way.
Just landed in Israel, like cool, you know, we're in Israel, and then turned on the phones and heard people start talking.
Yeah, I overheard somebody like, hey, check the news. So I just went straight to X and saw what's going on. And then about 15, it wasn't long, it was like less than 30 minutes later, that's when they announced they're going to war. So it was quite like, whoa, we were quite surprised.
The couple landed in Tel Aviv a day after Hamas, a Palestinian militant group, bombed an Israeli music festival. Hundreds were killed. The attack sparked the war, fueled by decades of tension between Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, it was interesting. On the way to the hotel, off to our left was this big, huge black plume of smoke.
The Larsons stayed in Jerusalem, Israel. They were there for a mission trip with 10 others from their Suffolk church congregation.
We're just walking out on the street. This is just right out in front of the hotel.
Although they felt safe and recorded highlights from the trip, they witnessed missile strikes happening less than an hour away.
I think my heart might have quit beating for a few seconds, but that was quite overwhelming. You could actually feel it. You could feel the vibration, and you knew that it was not thunder because of that.
That was explosions going off that were probably 20, 30 miles away. But it was so loud coming over the temple, you could just, just like the goosebumps, you could still just like, holy cow. And then a couple minutes later, the sirens went off.
At one point, the Larsons had to take shelter in Zechariah's tomb. Rita is right there walking up the steps. Zechariah's tomb is a historical religious monument dating back to the Middle Ages.
We know God's got us in the palm of his hands. At the same time, we know it's, we want to get out of here before things get any worse.
The war started. 10 on your side's Maria Bray spoke with the couple as our shows started this morning. Maria, this is such a scary situation for them.
Yeah, and Rita and Brian Larson are just trying to stay positive. And since we've aired this story, a viewer called me and said his company can help get them out.
My wife and I got up that morning because my son, who was not quite 2, woke us up, and it was about 5. And if it were not for him, we wouldn't have seen the story that you were reporting on.
Within an hour of airing the Larson story, James reached out. He asked us not to show his face for security reasons. By this time, the couple had been in Israel for 3 days. Flights were canceled.
I saw your story, and I told my wife, I said, I think we can do something about this.
James is former military and CIA who works for American Kinetics. The organization has trained crews across the globe that extract people from hostile areas. And the Larsons were one of their latest.
They did their due diligence on us too. They asked me, how do we know that you're not a bad guy?
Coming up at 6, we're sharing details on the rescue efforts. I'm Maria Bray, 10 on your side.
Welcome back. At 4, we told you about a Chesapeake couple who landed in Israel right as the war began. The couple was stuck for several days as the death toll climbed, and a way out seemed non-existent.
Until someone reached out to 10 on your side's Maria Bray. It's a story you'll see only on 10.
After 3 days in Israel, hearing missile strikes and taking shelter, Brian and Rita Larson called WAVY, asking for help to get them and their church congregation out of the country. Within an hour of airing their story, a viewer called saying he works for a group called American Kinetics and that they could help get them out. By day 5 in Israel, the group had their bags packed and ready to go, escorted by a multilingual extractor who goes by Walker.
He's probably 6'3", former U.S. Army sniper, and he's also an IDF guy. He drove the route during the times that we had planned for them to drive. He did it the day before so we would know what the traffic patterns looked like. He drove multiple routes. In the event one was blocked, we would have a backup plan. He inspected their vehicles to make sure that they were roadworthy. We had a couple of contingency plans. We had air, we had land, and we had sea.
He says if there were issues, a safe house was the last resort. The Larsens say they contacted the U.S. government for help. They received an email saying the U.S. would help them get to the safest location, but it would cost them, and they first would have to sign a promissory note.
Our government said, okay, we're going to fly you out, but you're going to have to pay for it. And the flights are run by contractors, and those contractor flights can be extremely expensive. We've seen this gap, and we thought, we're going to fix this.
In a statement, Senator Mark Warner says those who've contacted my office for assistance leaving Israel and the West Bank have successfully left. He says a promissory note and repayment is required by law if the government has to charter a flight to get Americans out in emergency situations. But American Kinetics got the missionaries out for free.
How are you all feeling right now?
Excited.
The Larsens' children and grandchildren anxiously waited at the airport late at night with signs and balloons until.
That was overwhelming. That was a very,
that
very
was
happy time. Yeah.
wonderful to see the kids.
A moment not taken for granted. Brian, who is a baker, is using his talent to raise money for American Kinetics through his food truck, Mr. Yummy Buns Cinnamon Rolls. The Larsens say they'll forever think about the lives impacted by the war.
It was really heartbreaking how many people were in fear and how many people you came across that had somebody that they had dramatically affected by what went on.
When they pray, they ask for this.
Peace, for healing, and for hearts to change. Hearts need to turn for this to really get fixed.
I asked the Larsens if they would return to Israel once the war is over. They said things would really have to settle down, but they would love to go back to the country. I'm Maria Bray, 10 on your side.